two staples have been doing some work. Nah, I kind of like the other way.
Yeah, I do too. I just think it needs to be like pretty much as close to that sign as you can get it.
Hold that sucker.
What about like that?
Just stand back.
Should I check this one?
I just missed where the stud is. Not that I need it.
These?
So do I need to...
No, it just needs to actually screw in.
Sweet.
Two.
I don't know, it's plastic, it's not glass.
Well, yeah.
So that might not be that bad.
Just nervous.
Ooh, man, that thing is bright. Jeez, all I see is green. That's pretty cool though.
It is cool.
What's going on, guys? So I'm back working on my 383 small block project here. So this was a 350, it's a late model casting, like a late 90s vortec, 350 5.7 vortec. So this was in my yellow S10 and we had some issues with it. I'm rebuilding it again now, so I'm kind of throwing everything at it and we're finishing up. So we've already went through a whole bunch of blueprinting. We had our crank and our pistons and all of that, the whole 383 stuff, the clearancing we had to do to make sure that all that stuff fit down inside there. We got a bigger cam that I got to talk about at some point. But for this video, we're going into some finishing stuff and the last of the machine work that I have to do. Now, I'm doing a no machine shop work on this. I'm trying to do all this at home and save some money and kind of just see what I can do. So one of the last big things I have to do that's a little nerve-wracking is cleaning up these decks. So on these 350s, they all have this annoying thing where the pistons are about 20 thousandths down in the hole. And that messes up like your whole quench and all the like important number stuff you need to be able to just run compression and make good power and not detonate and all that stuff. So I got a little home remedy. I'm gonna try to sand this down. I got a piece of wood, some floor sandpaper, and it is definitely a home remedy. But I did some experimentation and this is what the first side looks like. So I'm gonna show you how I got that to that really nice, basically mirrored finish with a piece of wood and some sandpaper. And we're gonna wrap up some other stuff on this. So let's get into it. Alright guys, so now that I finally got everything stripped out of this and I can start working on it again, we're going to get into decking the block. So what that basically means is there's this weird thing where the pistons come up, but they don't actually come all the way up to the top. So on these small blocks, it's usually somewhere around about 20 thousandths is how far they're in from the factory. So to fix that issue, you would usually take it to a machine shop and they would do what they call decking it or resurfacing it, and they would put it in a machine and that would actually cut this down and you get a finish that looks something like this. And so they basically cut it down to where that piston is, so it's a zero deck. And so now that means your piston is level with the head or the top of the engine here. So the only thickness in there is just your gasket and you don't have to try to run a extra thin gasket or anything weird like that. So I definitely don't have one of the fancy like broach machines or anything that those shops would have that they would use to do a job like that. But what I do have is some stuff that I assembled at some hardware stores. So let's check that out. So it's going to start out with a piece of wood. So this is just a 2 by, I think it's 12 inches wide this way. So basically a foot by something like 2 feet. My dad actually helped source this stuff for me, so I don't know exactly what it is. But you can get this at Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, whatever. Some handles like you'd put on your cabinets or something. Nothing special here. But I did make sure that this was a very flat piece of wood, so I can stick a level on here and it is almost perfectly flat all the way across. So that's the key thing, is anything that we're using, it has to be flat, because we don't want to put some kind of weird shape into our engine. And then also sourced at the same hardware stores, Home Depot, whatever, is some floor sandpaper. So most hardware stores have some kind of rental in them to where they have something like floor sanders, and if they have that, they have this really big sandpaper that's made for those, and this goes all the way down. This is a 36 grit piece, so this will definitely do some cutting action, and then they go up from there. This is a 120. This is what I'm going to be finishing with, because I think this is the highest one that I could get. We'll probably do a 36, like an 80, and then we'll finish it with this 120, and then we'll do some other little finish stuff like with the Scotch-Brite when we're done. Okay, so I got my sandpaper stuck on here and I'm ready to get into this. One thing to note real quick is that this is sized the way it is like this to where I don't see what I'm sanding. I can come back and forth and not actually see anything. And that's basically because if you use something small, you run the risk of just kind of digging a trench, or we want to make sure this is flat from this side to this side, so we want to skim the whole thing. So you want a little bit of wiggle room so you can get a good stroke back and forth on it. Well, unless I really wanted to work out my muscles, I tried using it just the way it was with the wood and the handles, and that wasn't really working out. It's hard to just keep a pressure on there to actually get anything done. So I found the battery for the truck, and that put some weight on it, but it's this sketchy box of acid, and all of the weight's right in the middle now, so I didn't like that. So I started looking around, and I realized I have the old crankshaft for this engine. So I threw that on there, and obviously that is about the size of the engine, and it spreads the weight out across the whole area now, and it's a good chunk of weight. Now there's a nice benefit to this, is that we can both work on this together now. So we started using that for a little while. We kept checking our progress. It seemed like it was working pretty good. I really liked using it this way, and it did move around a little bit, so I ended up putting some drywall screws eventually into it to keep it from falling on one of our toes. But with this, it worked pretty well, actually. I really like that. It's way better than trying to do it by myself, and with two people, it honestly wasn't too bad. So this is after 36 grit. We just got a little session done, about maybe 10 minutes or so. It really doesn't take long to start making a difference, especially with that low over grit. But it really highlights some of these little problem areas that even if I'm not able to fully deck this the way I wanted, I can at least get a really nice clean surface that I know my head gasket will actually stick to pretty well. Alright, I got the sandpaper swapped out from 36 grit to 80 grit now, so you can tell there's a pretty big difference between 36 is a pretty serious grit. Now we're going to something a little bit more normal here. This is going to be our halfway step. Alrighty guys, so this is after a lot of 80 grit action that I had some issues with measuring. It's kind of a crapshoot. I went back and I even tried to measure some stuff on this side, and it's really hard to just get a accurate measurement because we're measuring just like with the piston stuff, piston clearance, all that. It's just such little stuff. If even just a little bit of dust falls down in here and then I'm measuring on top of that, that throws my measurement off, and it looks like I somehow added material, and there's no way I did that. So I have a little bit of a ballpark rating. It is kind of a wide ballpark. Even if it's not perfect, it's still better than what it was. It's definitely cleaning the deck up really nice. I'm getting rid of all this corrosion and just stupid crap that's on here. It's pretty flat. I can put a level on it. And speaking of that, you can actually see in this area, I know I've gotten some funky measurements with both times I've assembled the engine now, even with the original when it was stock. And you can tell like it really didn't sand throughout this area, and I was flipping that board both directions and everything I could do to make sure everything was even. So there's definitely some kind of weird low spot going on here. So if anything, I hopefully leveled something out a little bit, and that low spot is not as low as it was because everything else got cut down around it. So no matter what, I think we're gonna have a win on this. Okay, so I skipped forward a little bit, and I finished up with the 120 grit. So that was the highest grit that I had. I also came back and I did some more work on this other side too. So I didn't do the 80 grit on this side. I went straight from the 36 to the 120, and that was too big of a jump. There was still some deep scratches in here, and I managed to get all those out. The 120 pretty much kind of like polishes it up. It doesn't really remove much. With that being said though, 120 is a little bit lower than what we want. So you're technically supposed to have somewhere around 180 grit for most MLS gaskets, which is probably what we're going to run. But what saves you a little bit is the thicker the gasket you have, the better chance you have of it sealing, because it can mush. There's just more of it there. So I know I took this deck down. Measuring it was kind of up in the air, but I think I'm somewhat close to a zero deck. We'll find out. It'd be a little bit of a surprise when we get the pistons in and I can get a true measurement from the pistons to the top of the deck. But I know we're definitely better than where we was, and I know it's pretty flat. I took a straight edge. I tried sticking a feeler gauge in, so there's kind of a rough measurement. You take the number of cylinders, and that's how many thousandths of inch you're allowed from like in between, and then you cut that in half for this way. So basically 4 thousandths of an inch that way, 2 thousandths of an inch that way. That's like premium spec right there. Now the feeler gauge I used, I was using like a 5 thousandths feeler gauge, and I couldn't fit that under anywhere, and it didn't seem like even if I was using a smaller one it would fit. So maybe just on like these little weird corners, maybe. But besides for that, it's pretty flat. I know we took something off because I seen some scratches and stuff just disappear, so I think we're pretty close. So now, since that's pretty much done, that leaves us with the last little bits of machine work so we can be like done with this thing. And that is, we need to go and put these little rings in. Now these ones I already did before I did this, and then I thought about the fact that I was going to deck it, and I kind of stopped because I might have to redo them depending on how much I removed. But you can still see where I did a couple of these. You just need that to help smack the rings in. I talked about that on the last episode, and I also talked about how I honed this out. I did this myself in the garage, 30 over hone, which made the original little chamfered edges go away. So I will have a link for that video in the description if you want to check that out. So real quick guys, if you can hit that thumbs up button down there, the like button, it helps me out immensely. It does a lot for my channel. It gets the videos out there. If you got anything out of this, or if you enjoyed it slightly. On a side note, shout out to the wife. She got me this really cool sign that you guys seen me put up back here. Goes for the channel. It also goes with this thing I got it like for myself for Christmas a while ago. Check engine light. I'll let you guys kind of figure out if that goes with the theme of what's going on here. Funny coincidence. Wasn't supposed to be a coincidence, but it is. But that's all I got, guys. So I'll see you in the next one.